can't lie, seeing the poverty in Somalia just hits different. It's definitely heartbreaking. When you come from the UK or from the West, you don't see Somali people on the streets. Come here and you see women that look just like your hoyo on the streets, homeless, begging, with nothing, with 3 kids around her waist. You see elderly women that look just like your ayeyo in the same situation. It really is so heartbreaking, eye-opening and humbling, and it makes you realize how lucky you are.
In Somalia's capital, Mogadishu, a wave of forced evictions has left hundreds of families homeless. Houses are being razed, often without warning, according to residents who claim they weren't given a chance to contest the government-led demolitions. Mamdek Mohammed is now sheltering in an IDP camp on the outskirts of the city.
We were ordered to pay $15,000 or $20,000 so that the land is legalized for us, but could not afford it, so evacuation was inevitable. The bulldozer came while we were in the house. We just left.
In the same camp, Kafin Mohammed said officials had told them the land belonged to the government. He says they had to run away when the bulldozers began demolishing their home and that their belongings were left behind. The government says it is legitimately reclaiming public land for development, but in Bainar, one of the affected districts, some residents displayed ownership documents they say were issued by previous administrations. Analyst Omar Ibrahim said many of the disputed plots have long-standing ownership records. Each piece of land has a known owner. If the government needs it for public use, it must relocate people fairly, he said. The demolitions have sparked protests, with residents burning tires and demanding accountability. But critics argue these evictions reflect deeper societal issues around corruption and poor urban planning.
Oh my goodness, guys. Oh my God. Whoa. The drought situation in the country is extremely guys. Oh my goodness. You guys really need to come through for these people. Oh my God.
حالنا بيئة عمنا مرة بعد الحمد لله جدا بانس كرسنا نكى طبعا شيء الهيري كرم عوض خبرنا نكى كلام ما بهاي وريك سنسا سكوا طالي شو بحاجة غابة طبعا شيء ممكن له أبيل وكرسنا. It's tough, you know.
ilmaha waa laga xanuunsan yihiin meeshaan waxaa sidii u imaanay waxaa jirta 10 gabdhood oo umar ah hata uji waxay ku soo
Just gets bad here, man. I just don't want to be here no more. Pray to God, I'm just tired of you guys talking about me and just always talking shit.
Children are the most vulnerable in a famine, so they're the first to die usually. We know from the UN that 488 children have died in care facilities so far this year, and that's not including the ones that didn't make it to those facilities. The real death toll is much higher and could go much, much higher if relief doesn't come soon. This village of about 100 farmers, after the rains failed, their crops failed, then the livestock died. They didn't have any milk for the infants. Condensed milk at the store got to be too expensive, and then several of their children died. So they decided to get up, move, come to this IDP camp in hopes of finding food. The ones that were too weak to make the journey had to be left behind.
Imagine being put on a plane, sent thousands miles away, and dropped in a country you barely recognize. No family waiting, no home to go to, no clear way to even survive, and yet the paperwork says returned home. But for many Somalis, deportation doesn't mean going home. It means starting over at the bottom alone. Stay with me, because what happens after deportation is rarely talked about, and it's far more complicated than most people realize.
Hello, I am Omid. I work with UNICEF. Now I am in Kahari internally displaced camp in Somalia, where families and children are arriving for survival. By survival, I mean they're just looking for food and water. Somalia is going through the worst drought in 40 years. Children are dying because they have nothing to eat or drink. UNICEF is on the ground, as you can see behind me, providing essential services like water, food, and health services. But it is not enough. We need to do more, and we cannot do it without your help. Please help us to help the children. Thank you.
This man relocated from Somalia, where they have their Sharia law, where he had the Sharia law that he loved so much. He relocated to the US, where they have their own culture and practices, and started agitating that the Sharia law should be implemented and imposed on the people of the US. And the US government said, we are not having it. They picked him up and gave him a free ticket. Yes, back to Somalia. They deported him. And now he's agitating. He's crying that jihadists are after his life. Excuse me. You think you are Muslim enough because you pray 5 times a day? By the time jihadists take over the government of that country that you are, you will realize that you can never ever be Muslim enough. Go and ask those in Afghanistan. Go and ask those in Syria why they ran away to go to another country to now go and be agitating for the same madness that they ran away from. It is because they know that it can never be as bad as they had it in the country that they ran away from. So that is it. So kudos to the US government. Any other person that wants Sharia law should go back to the country where they had it. You cannot go to a Western country and go and be agitating for the same madness that you ran away from in the country that you ran to. So kudos to the US government. I hope other Western states or Western countries would do the same thing. Anybody that is affiliated with anything Sharia, whatever agitation, they should just carry the person, bundle him, preferably with handcuff.
Every year, Somali men and women are deported from Western countries, that is the US, the UK, across Europe and beyond. Some lived abroad for 10, 20 and even 30 years, or even more. And some left Somali as toddlers, others were born in the US. They have never lived in Somalia at all. Yet the moment immigration status changes, none of that matters. A flight is booked and documents are stamped, and suddenly they are on their way to a country they only know from stories. And this is where the real story begins. Most deportees arrive in Mogadishu. For locals, it's home. For deportees, it can feel like another planet. They may speak Somali with an accent, not understand local customs anymore, be unfamiliar with neighborhoods, social rules, or even expectations. They look like Somalis, but culturally, socially, and even emotionally, they are outsiders. Their disconnect becomes obvious immediately. So from the airport to the streets, deportees are often recognized as different, and in a place shaped by a long instability. Starting out, it's not always safe.
I'd like to touch on both where we are right now in terms of the humanitarian context and how we're planning forward for 2026. And in so doing, I do want to appreciate the increasingly significant role that national, state, and local authorities are playing in working with humanitarian partners in delivering the response, as well as in addressing chronic hindrances to the response. For example, issues around aid diversion. The partnership has been growing stronger, and this is very much appreciated. If we look at the humanitarian situation right now, the deer rains have effectively failed. Previously, the GU rains were a little bit less than average in the center and south parts of the country, but failed in the northern parts of the country. And this means we're entering into a multi-seasonal drought. And our current estimates are that the number of people in acute food insecurity is going to raise by 1 million people over the course of these months, between October to December, raising from 3.4 million people to 4.4 million people in the short period of time. We've also seen an acute spike in generalized acute malnutrition in the last 3 months. I think going up by about 15% in a very short period of time. This makes us very nervous. It makes us very nervous because need is rising rapidly. at the same time, seen an unprecedented collapse of humanitarian financing globally and in Somalia. Our 2025 humanitarian response plan right now is about 23% funded, 22% funded. We're about 22% funded against the original plan for this year. And this has forced us to hyper-prioritize responses against those in the most dire situations requiring life-saving response. And we're doing our best to do so. And I give deep appreciation to the humanitarian community, which, without exaggeration, has lost hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of staff because of funding shortages, have been operating under severe constriction in terms of operational capacity because of the funding challenges, but nonetheless remain deeply, deeply committed to meeting the needs of the most vulnerable Somali citizens. But we find ourselves in this unique moment where funding has collapsed and needs are now starting to go up very quickly again. And collectively, we need to understand how we're going to work together with the Somali government, with the state governments, with other parts of Somali society, the private sector, the philanthropic sector, the religious leaders, diaspora, certainly local civil society, to do business differently. When we look at conditions right now, in fact, they look very similar to the conditions that we saw in 2021, before the drought that risked a famine in 2022, 2023. They look very similar to the indicators in 2016, before there was a drought that risked a famine back in 2017, right? So this cycle is getting shorter and shorter and more extreme. And we should all be very worried about this. And we have time now to invest in a preventative response. The forecasts we have are that in the first quarter of next year, we're going to start seeing pockets of IPC5. IPC5 are people that are in famine-like conditions, right? So we are likely to see in the first quarter of next year the beginning of localized, in some areas, famine-like conditions. We have to do everything in our collective power to prevent that. However, unlike in 2022, unlike in 2017, the international community is not able to step in with $2 billion or $1 billion in response. That money doesn't exist anymore. We've discussed this in the last meeting that we had in, what was the last meeting? In Baidoa, yeah. So we discussed this issue back then as well. But the global pot of funding for humanitarian response has shrunk dramatically.
Somalia has made progress, but security is the main concern and why most of the citizens have to flee the country. And armed groups like the Al-Shabaab remains a threat, especially in urban areas. So deportees attract attention because they are perceived as westernized, financially better off, or even connected to a foreign government. Even harmless behaviors, using a smartphone openly, or even asking questions differently dressed, can raise suspicion. So this constant need to stay alert creates fear, stress, and even exhaustion for the deportees. And remember, many deportees don't even know which areas are considered safe. Remember, they left the country young or have never lived there in the first place.
Over the course of the past year. And that's a simple reality to which we have to adjust. And we have to look at other ways of ensuring that assistance gets to these people. We will do everything in our power to mobilize the resources that are available and make every advocacy nationally in Somalia, regionally, and globally. But we also need stepping in of new actors and expansion of new partners. And we need that very quickly. Because if we're not figuring out ways to expand response in the next couple of months, I do fear that on our map of food insecurity, we're going to start seeing red dots, which means risk of famine. And I think it is time right now to raise the alarm bell on this collectively. I also think, in addition to broadening partnerships into the private sector and the religious sector and others, we have to increasingly work on reducing future risk and vulnerability by investing in solutions. And with His Excellency, the President, we were just talking before we came here, on the programs like the Jowar Off-Stream Storage Program, which are intended exactly to reduce future drought and flooding risks, to boost agricultural productivity in climate-sensitive ways, in ways that can deliver at scale, benefiting upwards of 1.6 million Somali citizens, as well as restoring the breadbasket of Somalia. And we need to keep our eye on that future and not lose that. And that requires, and again, we had a good meeting of partners to the JOSP in Mogadishu about 3 weeks ago, where we discussed the financing requirements to move that ahead. These needs and imperatives can't compete with each other. We have to save lives now, because it's an urgent and required a humanitarian imperative. But we also have to invest in solutions for the future that reduce need and vulnerability. If we had delivered on the JOSP 2 years ago, we might not have been in this situation right now. If we invest in solutions now, hopefully we can both prevent a current escalation of the food insecurity crisis and start to mitigate those risks for the future. So we look forward to working with you.
Security is only one piece of the problem. In Somali society, family isn't just emotional support, it is survival infrastructure. So housing, food, protection, and even connection. But many deportees return to find parents, some parents passed away, relatives went to other countries because of the conflicts that exist in the country. We have even grandparents, weekend, or even completely gone. So they arrive with no one to support them, and some arrive with names, but they have no way to find the people they knew before. So without families, deportees often rely on charity or even strangers, and these things run out with time and they often disappear, leaving the deportees in situations they are not able to deal with. From the media, we've seen that Somalia is one of the poorest countries we have in Africa, and poverty is one of the reasons so many want to stay abroad. So finding work is one of the biggest challenges in Somalia for deportees, because they have foreign education that isn't recognized locally. There is no work, no Somali work history. So for people who are hiring, they want people who have worked there in Somalia. So they also have no professional network. You had built a whole life in another country, now you have to do the same. So there is limited reading skills and writing. Remember, this country is a Muslim country, and most of them that want to hire, they want people that can relate. But now, so jobs are already scarce for locals, so deportees may end up doing irregular day labor. Some end up in international displacement camps, from what we've seen, not because they fled war, but because deportation left them with nowhere else to go. And here is something that almost never makes headlines. Deportation is not just a legal event, it is a psychological shock. Many deportees experience depression, anxiety, we have even traumas from detention or even forced removal. Now, let's add from the country they have been deported to the culture shock, isolation because they are considered as foreigners. We have even constant anxiety. You don't know what to expect. You don't know what to eat. You have no food. You literally are starting from scratch. So mental health services in Somalia are extremely limited, and stigma often prevents people from asking for help. So the pain gets buried, we have stress goes untreated, and people suffer silently. Here is the hard truth. For many Somalis, deportation doesn't end displacement. It creates a new version of it. Legally home, but socially isolated, economically stuck, psychologically strained. That's why some people attempt dangerous migration routes again, not out of recklessness but desperation. They are not chasing luxury, they are chasing stability. This conversation is not about politics, it is about outcomes. Understanding what happens after deportation helps us move beyond headlines and see the human cost behind policy decisions, because removal doesn't end a story. Sometimes it's where the hardest chapter begins. So if this video gave you a perspective, like, subscribe to join the family, and share it with someone who needs to hear this side of the story. Tell me in the comments, what responsibility, if any, do countries have for what happens after deportation? This question is for you, my audience. Give your comments in the comment section respectively. Let's have a discussion, not argument. Let's have a discussion. So thank you so much for watching this video up to this point. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.